Right, so more absolute craziness going on. I mean, this stuff is mainly out of the States, but Canada, it's going on as well. I mean, this kind of stuff isn't going on to the same degree in Canada, but the politicians are every bit as hypocritical and insane as they are in the States. So, um, anyway, basically, it came out yesterday. Citing this is from Chicago Breaking News. Citing threats, Mayor Lori Lightfoot defends ban on protesters on her block. I have the right to make sure my house is secure. Obviously, she's the mayor of Chicago, for anyone who doesn't know that. And then Cat Turd on Twitter here responds, "You can't make this up." Now, again, you really can't, because these are the same people. I mean, this crazy mayor of Chicago being one of them, who have constantly defended the protests, which they claim are peaceful. Which anybody that has the intelligence of a monkey knows that they're not all peaceful. A lot of it is violent. Again, I don't know why that even is a question. So, I mean, the city of Minneapolis is requesting $500 million of aid to help rebuild. Like, if anything, these are there. If anything, I think the argument is there more violence than there is peaceful demonstrations? I think that's where the debate is. So anyway, but again, the main point of this being is that all these politicians and these virtue signaling politicians and celebrities have constantly talked about how great the protests are and their peaceful protests and all this garbage, but yet, when it comes to them, all of a sudden things change. Not only have we seen this in Chicago, the whole Chaz shop thing, one of the reasons it got shut down is because they came for the mayor. I mean, you see this in many areas that all these politicians and celebrities. You've seen this out right when the George Floyd thing happened. I think it was a guy in the NBA. I don't remember. It was a pretty famous guy who, oh yeah, the protests are great, and then they came for his neighborhood and they were the worst thing in the world, right? So these people are just hypocrites. They don't actually believe what they believe. And the reason that a lot of people are saying, well, why are they doing it then? I mean, it should be obvious to most people, but the reason they're doing it is that they don't want the mob to come for them. Anybody who calls out the mob will come for them. Now, again, they don't even believe in something that the majority of people believe in. The majority of blacks don't even want to defund the police, or especially abolish the police. So they have a very fringe position. This is something that I really don't understand. BLM is a fringe, crazy group. I mean, many of the people that are in that group are Marxists. Many of the people that are in that group are black supremacists, or at the very least, support racist policy. So again, this is not, they don't have one major position that the majority of people agree with. In fact, they don't even have positions that the majority of blacks, agree with, aside from the whole, oh, blacks are more likely to face racism against the cops, which I've seen many things that conflict with that, contradict that. And I would say one of the main reasons why people believe this is because the mainstream media repeats it millions of times over. So again, perception is reality. It doesn't matter what reality is. The reality is that the police are not, at least on average, um, overtly racist against blacks. The data clearly points that out. And the fact that you can tell that these people have no idea what they're talking about is they'll constantly cite, oh, blacks are 13% of the population and they're a quarter of the people, um, arrested, or they have a quarter of the run-ins with police. Well, yeah, well, blacks also commit 50% of violent crime. So if anything, they're underrepresented. So and not to mention too, it's overwhelmingly black men, specifically younger black men. So you look at the population as a whole, black men between the ages of, like, I don't know, 14 to 40, probably commit the vast majority of the crime in said, area, which means that's probably maybe 3-4% of the US population that's committing probably around 40 to 50% of the violent crime. So it's really not hard to figure out that if you want to reduce crime, you do have to spend more time in black neighborhoods. You do have to um, gear your policies towards dealing with that kind of stuff, because again, where crime happens is very obvious. I mean, if you have an area that is majority minority, and or sorry, if you have an area that's majority minority, they will have a higher crime rate than normal. If it's drastically majority minority, then you will have a very high crime rate. You look at every area. You look at the areas that are overwhelmingly white and or Asian, very low crime rate. Again, poverty is not something that plays into this nearly as much as what people think. You look at the Rust Belt, the West Virginias of the world, there is that is one of the poorest white areas of the country, yet the crime isn't through the roof like many of these other areas that are overwhelming, or not disproportionately higher black and or Hispanic populations. And again, it's not racism if it's true. Because to make that argument, these same people, if you want to say that it's racist to point out that blacks are more likely to commit crime, and again, the data shows that beyond a shadow of a doubt, then you literally would need to be arguing, oh, it's racist that, or sorry, it's sexist that men are charged more for car insurance, specifically young men. Well, no. Everybody knows that young men are charged more because they're more likely to get in accidents and get tickets. That's like saying that it's sexist that more men are in prison. Not only that, way more men are in prison. No, it's everybody knows. Actually, there actually is sexism when it comes to sentencing. But even if there was no sexism, men would still be the clear majority of people in prison. And again, no one takes that as an excuse, right? Because everybody knows that men commit more crime. Again, so the same goes for all this stuff. But getting back to the main point here, these people are hypocrites. They should not be taken seriously. I don't understand how these people look at you with a straight face and support BLM on one hand, and then when it comes to them, they completely are against BLM. You look at the Minneapolis, the city council, they voted to defund the police, but yet now they all have private security. Again, they're just giving in to the mob. They don't actually believe what they believe. Like, I don't understand why people find this so complicated. But anyway, and this is from Scott Adams. This is kind of a similar point here. Can no one in the press get one of the protesters to describe what their preferred future looks like? Tell us where the money comes from in that future, for example, and what stops crime. Again, these people have no definitive plan. This is what we're going to do. This is how we're going to do it. It's just defund the police, get rid of prisons, and it'll all be fine. No. And this is something that I really can't stand, is that whenever you argue with the average person for a free market or any of this kind of stuff, they'll literally come up with what if scenario after what if scenario. And if you can't have a perfect answer for every one of those what if scenarios, they completely dismiss the entire argument, right? But when it comes to this kind of stuff, you don't even need to bring up what if scenarios. You can just point out the obvious contradictions in their propositions, like defund the police. Like, you want no police? No. And here's the thing too, is that they don't actually want to defund the police. They just want to control the police, right? Like, you look at the whole Chop Chaz thing. They didn't have no police. They just were their own police. They just had their own, quote, de facto police that were going around, killing people sometimes and shaking people down and doing the kind of stuff that, again, they complain about the corruption amongst police, but yet they were clearly more corrupt. You have these BLM people, whenever they get into a fight or something and one of their own people gets injured, it's, oh, call the police. Whenever they get assaulted, call the police. So again, they don't actually believe this kind of stuff. They just want to control it. They and this is communism 101. They want to completely overthrow the existing system and simply take it over themselves. It's really not complicated. We know the communist playbook. It's been around for over 100 years now. It should be rather obvious to people, but because they're so afraid of being called racist and they think that Black Lives Matter is actually about racial equity and all this social justice garbage, no. Black Lives Matter exists largely to push far left agendas. That's why it exists. There's no question about that, because if it did, then they wouldn't be on board with all this far left garbage, right? So anyway, that's the next thing I wanted to point out. Again, this is something a little bit of what I've been talking about. This is from Paul Mitchell. Deadly IED explosions in southern Ontario, chainsaw maniacs in Toronto, hammer machete murders in Red Deer, and I think the other one was in Moncton. Canada has changed and not for the better. Again, this isn't something that's completely out of control. Again, people point, oh, it's still isolated incidents, which it really isn't. Again, more people were killed with hammers in the last year and machetes than with AR-15s, but you have all these idiot anti-gunners who, oh, we got to ban the AR-15 because it kills a bunch of people, even though it only has killed like one person in Canadian history, right? Um, Again, so it has nothing to do with safety when it comes to this whole gun ban. That's so obvious, it's not even funny. And the fact that they claim to care about, oh, we want to save lives, well, then why are you bringing in so many people who disproportionately end up killing other people who end up doing this kind of stuff? Why are you doing it? It's almost like they only care about it, if it doesn't benefit them, right? Having less gun control really stands for them to lose because they can't push through their draconian authoritarian laws. Having mass immigration, regardless of whether or not the people completely don't integrate whatsoever, benefits them because it's more votes for them. Um, Again, like this kind of stuff, it's only going to get worse too, because as long as the liberals stay in power, they're going to keep immigration through the roof. And not only that, too, it seems like they have a coordinated plan to want to not only unleash mass immigration on the big cities, but on some of the smaller to medium sized towns and cities. And it's not going to turn out well. Like, it's not going to turn out well. And again, I've mentioned a million times, I'm perfectly fine with immigration under a few caveats. Number one, the government isn't going to run deficits to do it. Number two, there's low unemployment. And number three, the people are basically not forced coercively, but forced to, number one, contribute to the system, and number two, integrate. Because again, people make the, oh, you got to have some compassion argument. Number one, those people don't care. These leftists are a lot less likely to donate to charity and to volunteer their time for charities than people on the right. So that argument is stupid. And number two, if I was in one of these people's position, I would be perfectly fine giving up some of the things that I would be again, like I would be perfectly fine learning a new language. I would be perfectly fine integrating into another culture. And this is the problem with mass immigration, is that most of these people, and this is the thing too, is that they really don't have any much of an incentive to do it too. So I understand where, from these people's position, that if you have no incentive to integrate, why would you integrate? If you have no incentive to work, why would you work? That's the problem. Like that, they can get $25,000, I think it is, free money with healthcare and dental benefits. Like, why would you work if you can get that much money? Like, that's a lot more than you were getting in your old country. Again, so that's just, again, this is something that's I've talked about a lot before, but it's going to get crazier and crazier by the year, until I would say it's probably, people aren't going to realize it until it's too late. But I would hope that enough people wake up beforehand to make a change. And the last thing I wanted to bring up here is from Spencer Fernando. Politicians want to reduce the amount of anger in the country. They should embrace shared sacrifice, take a 30% pay cut while the economy is in tatters. Much of the anger today is because those who are in power seem totally insulated from the suffering of Canadian people. And this is a very good point, that I think that in any just and sane society, I mean, number one, um, unless the economy is growing at least 2-3% a year, I think every public sector salary should be completely frozen, especially politicians. The fact that these politicians basically voted themselves a raise over this, they basically voted themselves paid time off, is absolutely insane. And again, I don't care what side of the political aisle you're on. I think it should apply to absolutely everybody, including conservatives. I don't care what side of the political spectrum you're on. If the economy is suffering, politicians should not get paid more. Should not get paid more. And I understand there's some problems when it comes to that. That a new party may inherit a bad economy, and it may take them 3-4 years to get out of it. And then they get voted out, and the other party would absorb that good economy. I understand that, but um, I still think that it's better to have it that way than the other way around, because and this is the thing too, that these politicians have no incentive, not much of an incentive, if any, to make things better. I mean, the liberals have no incentive, and the conservatives are basically there. I mean, I think there's some exceptions. I mean, I think Pierre Poilievre and people like that are doing a good job calling out the Trudeau's, the liberals of the world. But the majority of these people, they're basically just function as controlled opposition, and that's the problem. Is that these people just don't have an incentive, and that's how human desire is driven. It's not that people are naturally good, naturally bad. They're driven by incentive, and this is the problem when it comes to politics and public sector work in general. I mean, same thing goes for schools. Is that if schools aren't doing good, well, what is everybody's solution to it? Oh, they need more money. When what happens, well, people say, hey, we did a terrible job the last little while, and we got more money. What incentive do we have to improve? Because if public schools are they're roaring, the test grades and everything's through the roof, people are like, yeah, we can probably afford to cut back there a little bit. So again, this is the problem, that the incentives of the way things are done are so backwards that it's not even funny. And I don't think that it is possible to improve society, at least to a significant degree, and still until this is changed. I mean, there's other things that could be done, but I don't see it. I don't see it because, especially these leftists, they benefit from bad times. And why? Because if people are unemployed, their solution to it is always just to give them free money. And what happens when you give people free money? They want more free money. And what do they do to get elected? It's always, oh, not only will we continue all the free stuff we're giving you, we're going to give you more. And that's how they always get elected. So again, it's very, very insane. But anyway, I'm gonna leave the video. I'm gonna leave the video there. If you liked it, make sure to hit that like and subscribe if you haven't already. Make sure you follow me on those other platforms: Twitter, BitChute, Parler, especially Twitter and BitChute. Very important that you follow me. And yeah, last thing, stay tuned for more.